U.S. Secretary of Defense Llойд Ostin has secured an agreement from Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte to restore a key pact allowing military exercises between the two countries to continue. American naval presence in the Indo-Pacific is seen by many Southeast Asian states as a counterbalance to a rising China. Beijing has claimed sovereignty over large parts of the nearby South China Sea, even constructing artificial islands for its Navy and Air Force. Secretary Ostin said his visit was meant to underscore the importance of the relationship with the Philippines, which is the U.S.'s oldest ally in Asia. Joining us is journalist J.C. Gotinga in Manila. J.C., this looks like a win for the Biden administration. Is this a win for the Philippines?
You know, Melissa, looking at the broader picture of where the Philippines finds itself in terms of its geopolitics at the moment, it is to be considered largely also a win for the Philippines in terms of its credible defense posture, its ability to stand up against any possible aggression from China. You see, the United States is the Philippines' only treaty military ally, and that agreement that was reaffirmed today, it's called the Visiting Forces Agreement. Besides allowing for military exercises between the Philippines and the U.S., it actually basically allows the United States to maintain a considerable military presence in the Philippines that would otherwise be prohibited under the law. Now, experts here in Manila agree that this Visiting Forces Agreement is what operationalizes, it gives teeth to the alliance between the Philippines and the U.S., which means without it, even if there is that alliance on paper, should there be any need for the United States to come to the Philippines' aid in a military sense, it would be very difficult to do so, given that the nearest base of the U.S. would probably be Japan, Guam, or even Hawaii, as opposed to having its troops and some assets already in place in the Philippines.
Now, there's, of course, been a long dispute between the Philippines and China in the South China Sea. And in fact, Manila took a case to the United Nations, which ruled in Manila's favor. Where do things stand with those contested waters? Do we have fishermen out there? Do we have military patrols out there?
Well, in recent months, the Philippines has stepped up patrols in what it calls the West Philippine Sea. This is the area that the United Nations Tribunal affirmed to be the Philippines' rightful area within the South China Sea, including its 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone and other territories that are disputed by different countries in the area. Where it stands, despite this stepped-up presence, it really was a reaction to this increasing number of Chinese vessels that are regularly found present in Philippine waters. These are not just these fishing boats that the Philippine government and even experts around the world agree to be manned by Chinese militias, but also there have been increasing reports of Chinese warships and a steady presence of Chinese Coast Guard vessels in key areas of the South China Sea. The international community and the previous government of the Philippines, the Filipino public in general, have hoped that this arbitral award, that the government would capitalize on it to kind of push back against Beijing. But the Duterte administration has largely set that aside in favor of warmer ties with Beijing.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that. President Rodrigo Duterte has in the past flattered Chinese leader Xi Jinping and seemed to want to build friendlier relations with China. Where does things stand? Has he entirely pivoted from that position with the news that we're just hearing from Llойд Ostin's visit?
Not at all, Melissa. In fact, just last Monday, Duterte was still at it, criticizing the United States. His accusations basically were that the United States have been an unfair ally to the Philippines, that it has not lived up to expectations of what each country brings to the table in terms of military aid. Of course, the Philippines is on the weaker side of the military spectrum here, obviously. But yeah, Duterte maintains a very friendly stance towards China. He calls Xi Jinping his friend. In fact, he once said that he simply loves Xi Jinping, and it's a consistent theme throughout his addresses, his rhetoric. Whenever he's confronted with anything relating to China, he is always sounding favorable to Beijing.
It sounds like he's trying to win both the United States and China.